that it is grandfathered when there is a public taking for transportation improvements. And as a matter of fact, if you go along Abernathy right now, you will see that happening in the shopping centers where the widening is going to occur. So I just want you to know that. We will, however, try to work with them because it's not to their advantage either to not have enough parking on the site. So we will try to work with that to make sure that if that is indeed going to be the case in the future, that we have some kind of plan for how we're going to address it, probably now rather than later. But that there is a portion of that property, and you're right about those parking spaces. They are owned by Fulton County.
But I don't think it's 8. I think it's fewer than 8. But that project was a Fulton County project, and I spoke to the Public Works Department of Fulton County, and the reason why that did not go forward was, one, lack of funds, and two, because of environmental hazards that have, if you, I don't even know what it is now, but it used to be the Happy Face gas station on Ross Road. And you all know that the migration of the contaminated material underground, that is the reason why they did not proceed with that, because of the substantial cost of mitigating that environmental problem. So that's one of the main factors of their not going forward. As far as the legal number of spaces, again, we've got more than the number of legal number of spaces to keep us legal. From a code standpoint, the question then becomes, as a practical standpoint, we need to make sure that we have enough parking for our parishioners, and to do that, if that ever became a problem, we'd have to go off-site. I'm going to let you control it.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple of data points you probably need to collect, because I'm not sure exactly the answer to them, and you may not know the answer yourself, but you keep talking about classes. How many classes do they hold? What's the average size of the class? How often do they meet? Yeah, these are data points that you'll need as far as traffic and parking usage.
Yeah. And that varies completely. People come in for say they want an introductory class to Church of Scientology. That may be a 6-hour, 8-hour course that they take over a weekend in a day. They typically have 3 different sessions of classes: morning, afternoon, evening classes. And within those sets of classes, then they will have different classes in those time periods that address, introductory and then much more advanced. And as you get more advanced, then of course the number of people in any one study will decrease, and they will range from, in the existing classes at Dunwoody, they'll range from 2 people to 30 people kind of range.
Yeah, but at any point in time, how many classes would be going on in the day?
That depends on growth in the crystal ball. We don't know the answer to that. So that's not something that we can project at this moment, but it will be a manageable number that they will have to deal with the people that come in and out. And from a parking standpoint, they've got to address their needs to park. They also, in a class situation, it's a buddy system where you buddy up with another person, so you oftentimes will carpool, and y'all are responsible for accountability as far as preparation and everything else. So a lot of times they will partner up as far as that's concerned and carpool.
Yes. I wanted to know what the legal definition of a church is. Anybody knows that?
We'll pull the zoning ordinance and we'll read it to you from the book.
Okay, because the more we're talking about this, it seems like there's 44,000 square feet of offices, but there's just this one little part for a church. It seems like they do more counseling and healing.
What it seems like, Patty, is they developed the answer and backed it into the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not the city attorney. I have the definition that we use from the ordinance.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you right now that if you have issues with whether this meets that or not, he and I will discuss it. But my experience is that because of the constitutional issues involved with places of worship, we generally defer to however people choose to worship, as opposed to having a standard for one size fits all, because different people handle it differently. So
Right,
let me
right.
read you the definition. A church, temple, or place of worship is a facility which persons regularly assemble for religious ceremonies. This shall include on the same lot accessory structures and uses such as ministers and caretakers' residences and other uses identified under the provisions for administrative and use permits in our zoning ordinance. And my point is that it's a broad definition because churches handle these things differently. And we've got in Sandy Springs lots of different types. And so I would say to you that although this isn't like every other church in Sandy Springs, I would say that it meets that definition. And that would be how we would view it. And I believe that's how the city attorney would view it as well.
Have you ever been to one of their services?
I have not. No, the lady behind you was first.
Oh, how many, back to the classes, how many classrooms are in the renovation? How many are they building and how many does each classroom hold?
I don't have those figures.
I have one other question, please. At the last meeting and at this meeting, I was curious how come you don't have someone to represent the Church of Scientology that can answer some of these questions that you don't know the answer to.
I've answered the questions from last time tonight, and I represent the church, and so that is my job, and that's what I'm going to do. That it's not up to you as to who makes the decision as to who speaks. And I'll be glad to answer any relevant questions, and if I don't know the answer, rather than telling you an answer that may or may not be correct, I'd rather look and find out the answer.
Okay.
I can't imagine, I was a builder and a developer myself for some years. And anybody in their right mind who would go to the closing table and spend, as counsel says, multi-million dollars and not have, it just sounds disturbingly to me that a quid pro quo has been established some time ago. Oh, a church, 1,400 square feet, you're covered. And to me, that's just, and I think I don't know, I feel that underneath in some of these people too, but I feel it very strongly. And if I can do anything about it, you got a long way to go, Counselor.
Well, I would say to you that it's not all that unusual to have people close on a piece of property before they bring it in for zoning. And we've had several recently, so I know it's not the old standard in the development community, but for some reason it seems to be happening. I can't respond to that, and I don't.
Well, my only response is it sounds like you're making an accusation sort of sinister. I've been involved in this case about 3 weeks to a month. I wasn't involved in the closing. They closed it. They had engineers and architects. They got one of the largest architectural firms in the country that works on this, Gensler, that did their investigation. And if they do their investigation, they do all their sites across the country. If they did their investigation and determined that the requirement was 46 spaces and they've got 83 spaces, then, and they know what their practical needs are, then they felt comfortable in going forward. So it's their money and their right to do it. And there's nothing sinister about it. So don't insinuate that there's been some deal that's been cut, because there hasn't been.
Tricia and then the lady behind you.
Would Mr. Galloway be able, at some future meeting, be able to provide, perhaps even by email, to some of the people that you have been communicating with within this group, at least, how many classes currently are being held in the Dunwoody location a week?